I'm Reverend Phil, and I'm your host for Words of the Prophets. Where are our prophets now? Where are those messages God chooses to communicate divine revelation through? In the past, the Creator has sent prophets like Abraham, Siddhartha, Jesus, Muhammad, and many more. Maybe our higher power has switched tactics since we reinterpret God's words as soon as the Creator's prophets leave us. Could it be that Spirit talks to each one of us individually and we haven't learned to listen? On Words of the Prophets, our modern prophets show us how to find the internal prophet that is the I Am, and we discuss the application of spiritual principles in all aspects of our lives. Love and light, everybody. I'm Reverend Phil, and I'm your host for Words of the Prophets. Today my guest is Ross Bishop. Ross, welcome.
It's good to be here, Phil.
It's good to have you. Ross is a shaman and an author, and today's prophetic topic is to seek for love. This phrase comes from the writings of Rumi and can be found on page 33, opening up chapter 2 in Ross's book titled Journey to Enlightenment, and the chapter is titled Beliefs. The statement reads as follows: your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. And that's a pretty heavy statement, and we're going to dwell into that a little bit later. But before we do that, tell us about your journey. Tell us about your story.
It would be nice to say that it was some intellectual effort to find enlightenment or that kind of thing, but Phil, really what it was I was in a lot of pain. Childhood had been really rough, and I was having a hard time fitting in the world, and I was just trying to find some answers to, who am I, and where do I belong, and what's important and what's not important, what's real, I guess. And so I ended up with a guy called Babaji in India, and there's one kind of telling moment for me. He wanted us to build this causeway along the river that was next to the ashram. Now, the ashram is miles from the Himalaya mountains, so the water was like 34 degrees. It was freezing. And we were gathering rocks from the river to put up on the shore. Here I am up to my thighs in this freezing ice water holding this rather large rock, and I said to myself, here I am. I've negotiated labor contracts with some of the greatest corporations in the world. I've done this, I've done that, and I'm carrying rocks for this crazy man in India. And he was about 2 blocks away on the other side of the river, and he just cracked up. And so, in that moment, something really special happened for me. It was a very powerful insight. But anyway, I had a number of those things. He got me to investigate the possibility that I had some spiritual gift. I had no idea. I was just looking to heal my pain. And I ended up going to Chiapas, Mexico, studying with a shaman there, and studying with another shaman in Guatemala. And so they helped me to unlock what was already inside. And this was the thing I wanted to say, is that, in like, if you study engineering or science or whatever, the Western tradition is we want to give you information. Uh-huh. And what I've learned is this is a very different process. What I needed to know was already inside. And these people just helped me to unlock it and have the faith, have the confidence to let it out, which is, I think, the thing we'll spend probably most of this time talking about. Yeah,
there's a couple of questions I want to get into before that. I mean, that's a pretty broad leap from Hindu Vedic teachings to shaman. Why? I mean, why wasn't Babaji the teacher? What do you think that was all about?
Fundamentally, it's all about coming from the heart, okay? I don't know why it was that the Vedic side wasn't the right fit for me, but I could tell it. There were some wonderful things there, and I got just enormous amounts out of it. But it's like when I kind of hit the shamanic path, then I just knew I was home. And before that, if you just said shaman to me, I'd have no idea what the heck you're talking about.
What events or people or combinations guided you to the first shaman?
Well, this is kind of a funny story, but we'd go up to get Babaji's blessing every night if there weren't too many, tourists in the ashram. And I went up this one night, and you prostrate yourself and touch his feet and ask him for his blessing. And he held up his hand. Now, this is the only 2 English words I ever heard him say. He took this piece of paper out of his dhoti, and he gave it to me. And he said, "You go." And on it was the name of this town in Chiapas, Mexico.
Wow.
So, you'd have to ask him
Yeah.
what the higher logic there was about, but that's really how it happened.
What was his lineage? Do you know?
He has been here. This was the 3rd incarnation that he has been here. He goes back so darn far. I don't know who he would say his teachers were. I don't know.
Because, I mean, Babaji is a fairly common...
Yes, it is.
It's an honorific. It's not really a name.
Yeah, right. No, this is the guy. This is the Babaji that everybody in India says, "Oh, yeah, him. That's the guy."
How did you get to him?
There was a woman in San Francisco that I was dating who had been with him shortly before this. And, she's watching me struggle, and we're talking about stuff and life and whatever else. And she said, "I think you really ought to go meet this guy." So I said, "What the heck?" I wasn't doing anything else at the time, so I just went. I'd left corporate life, and so I was looking for answers. And so, why not?
So then you got sent to Mexico.
Yeah.
And how did that work? I mean, what happened after that?
Well, I spent the first couple months just following this old shaman around, just carrying stuff. And we were sort of the emergency room team for this set of villages. And so we'd come into a village, and if there's somebody needed help, then we'd do ceremony and do the healings with them. And I mostly just sat there with 2 other apprentices, and we just watched, okay? And so...
Chop wood, carry water, huh?
Yeah. Well, and I'm learning about the plants there. I'm learning about, what to use for this and what to treat, how do you treat dysentery and how do you treat cholera and what do you do for bubonic plague. And there were also quite a few witches in the area. So every once in a while, we'd have to deal with a bewitching. Somebody would have a spell that had been cast on them. So we're working with this one guy one day, and the old one just simply turns around and he said, "Do you see what's going on?" And I said, "Yeah," because I could see the energies of what was happening. Now again, this wasn't something I think I'd been taught. But he knew, and so I was watching what was going on. And I don't know, it was 3 or 4 days later, there was this woman that he was working with, and he turned to me at that point and he said, "You do." So I did. I did what I had seen him do and what felt right and what seemed to work, and it worked. And so from that time on, I did most of the bewitchings that we had to deal with, and those guys dealt with most of the physical problems which were many, that you faced in an environment like that. So, it's not like I took some history course and learned how to do it. It was there, and he knew it. I did not, but he gave me the opportunity to find it.
And prior to finding it, did you go on journeys?
Yeah. Ayahuasca is a very important part of that tradition. And so, again, it was a way to kind of break down my walls, break down my resistance to who I thought I was, who I'd come to believe I was. It was the same deal as the Babaji rock. It was like, here I am, here's who I believe I am, and they're going, no.
So then you switched to another shaman.
Went to another guy, just same basic concept, a little different traditions, different tribal traditions, and so he just extended my teaching just a little further. And it was about that time, it had been 2.5 years in the jungle, and it was time to come home.
Were these journeys based on substances, so to speak, or were they based on drumming or music? How did...
We did a lot of drumming, and we would do a fair amount of ayahuasca on the new moon, which is when we do that ceremony. And there's this whole thing in this culture about drugs. And honestly, for me, drugs have been used in a very spiritual context, and I find them to be marvelous substances when used in the right way.
Well, using them in the right way requires somebody to guide you. It's not running into the bathroom with a needle and shooting up.
Yeah, that's just avoidance. And you know that one better than I do.
Yeah, there's a whole big difference when somebody will be a shaman who's trained in certain substances, certain amounts. I'm here with you. I'm guiding you through this.
Right.
As opposed to, leave me alone, I'm gone.
Let's go party or whatever.
Yeah. Well, that's party ended a long time ago.
Okay. But yeah.
Yeah.
But it's like we don't understand how to use drugs in this context at all.
No. So you got to a point where you, were told you've gotten everything I can give you, that's it?
Pretty much. I mean, it's like, I could have stayed in that culture forever, I suppose, but, the jungle's a tough place to live. Rainforest is a tough environment. And I probably grown up down there, it might have been a different thing, but it was just after a couple of years, I said, okay, I felt like I was done. So I came back.
So, and I want to just, let me check in on one thing. My understanding, the name Shaman, the title Shaman means seer in the dark?
Yes.
Okay. So that really refers to more about the journey and the dark side. You have a book, which we're going to get to, about the shadow. Is that what we're talking about?
It is,
Seeing
yes.
in the dark?
Yes.
Before we even get to that one, let me just talk a little bit about, so now you're a practicing shaman.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get the things that you need? I mean, I can see living in a rainforest, all the plants are there that you need to do the healings.
Yeah.
You're here in a desert. So what do you have to, do you import them? Do you grow them? Or
No, I don't do drugs in my practice.
Well, how about even just for healings?
No.
Okay.
In the first place, you're running all these issues with the AMA, and I just don't want to get crosswise with them. So I just decided not to use drugs in anything I do. What I do is just to help people go into that dark side of themselves that we can talk about.
So you just lead them on journeys?
Right.
Excellent. I want to, there's a couple of statements you made on your website. One of them is, I think that the work picks you out and draws you in, often in spite of your better judgment.
If you were to tell somebody what this work was like on the front end, they'd all run out of the room screaming. It's tough work, and it's very demanding. And I didn't know what I was getting into, okay? I'm a corporate person. I went to law school. I did all these traditional Western things. And I'm in the middle of this thing that I had no understanding of, really. But what was really interesting is, as I said before, was how at home it felt. I just knew I was coming home. Now, I don't know what that's about. God's got some kind of agenda for all of us that I certainly don't understand, but I certainly can tell when it's there, and it was. So
let's talk a little bit more about that statement.
Yeah.
Shamanism, as I understand it, is more about unity and oneness than it is about a deity. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, it's not a religion. It's about helping you to deal with the parts of yourself that hold you back, that keep you from being the person you want to be. And religion really is kind of unrelated to that in that sense. It's deeply spiritual in kind of a pure sense, but there's no dogma, there's no catechism, there's no kind of religious structure.
Is there any kind of ultimate deity?
There's God or the creator or whatever you want to call it, but it's not a worshipful kind of thing. You acknowledge the existence of the creator. I mean, that's,
But then it's basically,
yeah,
that's it.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's you dealing with you. That's where we spend most of our time focused.
So I have a problem. I mean, now, again, I think I have some understanding of shamanism. I create pain for myself in my physical body, whether it be emotional or physical pain. I get to a place where that pain becomes so pronounced that my soul can no longer handle it. At that point, my soul starts to vacate my body.
Yeah.
If I get to a place where it's vacated far enough, I allow the possibility of another soul to enter. How do you deal with that?
Okay. Let me try. It's a $64 question. Let me try, okay?
Okay.
Okay. At the bottom of all of that will be this universal human dilemma, which we see in people regardless of culture or religion or race or ethnicity or whatever, which is that as we grow up, or when we grow up, we come away from childhood with a set of beliefs that are inherently negative about who we are. And when you see something that's that universal in the human condition, you know there's just a whole lot more going on. Okay, so at the bottom of this pain that you're experiencing are some set of beliefs that says, Phil is this, Phil is not that, Phil is. And what happens, Phil, is that then as you go through life, life comes at you and you react, you constrict yourself, you don't react freely and openly as we might otherwise like. And all of those individual contractions reside somewhere in your body, in your mind, in your psyche, okay? So what I do with people is to help them to see that the fundamental beliefs that they carry about themselves are not true. They cannot possibly be true. You're a child of God, so you can't be, for example, unworthy, all right?
Let me just...
Go ahead.
So basically what I hear you saying in semi-therapeutic language is I have certain stresses, certain traumas that I hold on to. I keep feeding into them, repeating them because I believe that to be true.
Yes.
And I also hold the energy that they create in one or more parts of my body.
Yes. I mean, you're probably familiar with tension in your shoulders, tension in your neck. We shut down our breathing sometimes, our blood pressure goes up. Those are all expressions of tension of some kind or other that we hold because we're not in harmony with life in that moment.
Okay. So now what would you do?
Okay. So we begin by helping the person to get in touch with that wounded inner part. You go way back to childhood, you go back to 2 years old or 5 years old or 6-year-old. We find that kid who was innocent, who had done nothing wrong, but who walked out of the situation with his or her parents believing that there was something wrong with them. And we work with that kid.
Okay, let me cut in again for a second. Does shamanism embrace the concepts of karma or reincarnation?
Yes.
So we could see that what I bring in as a child more than likely comes as a fulfillment from a past life?
Fulfillment's a tricky word. Let me put it another way.
Okay.
The unresolved issues of your past lives will carry forward. And so if you come in, or when you come in, you'll be on this track that says there's this issue and it needs to be resolved. And so you will recreate, or you will create the experiences that you need to teach you to learn about this this negative part of self.
I get to situations where I get a chance to meet myself.
Yeah.
Then I have free will to decide whether I actually do meet myself or not.
Right.
Okay. So now you're going to intervene into this process and help me meet myself.
Right.
Okay, how does that happen?
Okay, well, this is the shamanic journey. This is probably the most powerful healing tool in the kind of shamanic toolkit.
Yeah.
And we go back. I will start a client, we'll go back and work with this stuff in this lifetime so that the person begins to heal their issues with their parents, with whoever else caused them problems when they're growing up. And when that's pretty well resolved, then we'll start to go back and work with the old stuff from past lives that they have carried forward. And the process is constantly to just help the person to stand in the truth.
Can we go into this a little bit deeper? How do you explain the journey for the people who have not experienced it or are exposed to it?
There are parts of it that don't have words, and so that's a little difficult. Well, I mean, it's kind of hard, but it's like I will create a space for the client that is safe. I'm managing the energy for the both of us in that time, and I create an egg, I guess, that then allows them to be safer than they normally feel, to then go back, and to go back into what in some cases is a very traumatic time. And so, that comfort level is helpful.
So this journey you're facilitating is almost like a guided meditation?
Yeah, only it's not exactly a meditation. You're very conscious, you're very aware. We just go back into that place. I don't know how else to say it.
How do you deal with an individual's resistance?
Resistance is fear. And in every case, what that's about is just the fear to find the truth. The wonderful thing that I got going for me here that really saves me in terms of doing this work is all I have to do is help people to see the truth about themselves. And then the fears disappear, the anxieties drop, all the resistance goes away. Okay, so all I have to do is to help them to continue to stay focused on what's true. And if we go back, for example, to a place where there was serious trauma, okay? Let's say sexual abuse, something as bad as that. Okay, I can help them to see the perpetrator and what was going on for, let's say it was a father, what was going on for him and how he was dumping his stuff onto this kid at the time. And in that moment, then this adult can look back and see that back then, she hadn't done anything wrong. Well, she will have carried for 40 years the belief that it was at least partly her fault. And so in doing that, she then begins to live more in the truth of that moment.
So how much of this process is healing, changing the misconceptions, transforming them? How much of this process is acknowledging one's own perfection and divinity?
Well, I don't know how to, it's both. A lot of it is focused on staying in the truth because frankly, once you do that, you find your divinity essentially on its own. But so I don't focus a lot on that, but when you build a relationship with your damaged inner ones and you do this healing, what happens is a natural connection to the Creator. It's a really beautiful thing to see.
So I'm going to read something from your third book because we haven't even started the first book yet.
Okay.
We have kind of, life is not about becoming something different than you already are. Life is about finding out that it's safe to let go of what you're not, of all the protective things you cling to that hold you back. You are already the magnificent being you are becoming. The evolution is in your consciousness. Your learning the truth is the crux of the transformational process called enlightenment.
If you take a child and you look at a child in its natural state, the kid's open, they'll just share their truth right out, they'll take off their clothes because it feels like it's the right thing to do, doesn't matter where they are, okay? That's who we are naturally, and who we are naturally is to be compassionate and loving and open and sharing and all those beautiful things that Christ talked about. And what happens is that we get taught that that's not okay, that who we naturally are, we shouldn't take our clothes off in front of Aunt Mary, or we shouldn't go play in the mud because. And it gets a lot worse than that. But the bottom line is we get convinced to shut down who it is we naturally are. Okay?
Yes.
So what I do with people is to help them to peel away all those lessons that have closed them off to their natural self. For example, I'm working with a guy yesterday. This guy's grown up his whole life in this Hispanic family where it's simply not okay to share your feelings. And so he has to learn now that it's okay for him to express what's really inside and that he can do that safely. So
I want to run something by you because I think one of the things I talk about in the counseling I do is abuse is any time a child and their behavior are made to be one.
Yes.
And that's exactly where it all starts.
You're a bad boy.
Yeah, instead of saying, hey, I love you, I don't have a problem with what you just did, it's like, what's wrong with you? Why can't you get this right?
Yeah, we take our focus off the behavior. We say, look, I love you, but I don't like what you just did.
Yeah.
Instead we say, what's wrong with you, or how
Yeah,
dumb
why
are you?
can't you get this right?
Yeah, or how come you're not as smart as your sister?
And we're teaching this person that they're not okay,
Yeah.
and we're teaching this person that they have to, in order to be semblance of okay, they have to meet somebody else's criteria.
Got to live by somebody else's rules.
Yes, exactly.
That was my struggle, Phil. I was trying to live life by all kinds of other people's rules, and it didn't work. Never does.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay. Now, as you know, a lot of people, some people get in that situation, and then they start using drugs. They start, they'll use sexuality. They'll get lost in work, whatever, some kind of compensation, relationship, whatever, to compensate for that hole that's in here.
Yeah, exactly. There's a beautiful saying in 12-step. The second step is about coming to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity.
Yeah.
So when I was working with my first sponsor who was guiding me through the steps, his comment to me was, and I'm assuming he said it to all his sponsees, is just, you have no clue what sanity looks like. Let's talk about insanity. Okay. But what I was getting to is that one of the definitions of insanity he gave me is trying to fix what's broken inside of me with something outside of me.
Doesn't work.
Can never work.
No.
Exactly. So the journey is both, when we go on a journey, the image is we're leaving our body. Now, what you're saying to me is we're going on a journey to go into our body.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, where's the boundary? So we get tangled up in language in terms of where we're going. But the point is, we are, from my point of view, we're going inside to heal what's broken.
Okay.
Now, rephrase that. I was wrong. I misspoke. To convince ourselves, to show ourselves that what we think is broken isn't
Not broken.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
To heal the misconception
Yes.
that I'm not okay.
Yes.
I have to be okay. I'm a child of the Creator. So we're kind of segueing into the first book, Healing the Shadow, which was written in 1998. And at the end of the show, Ross will give out a website address where you could actually purchase the books. But we didn't flash it on the screen because the email address on the website is not accurate, so we chose to flash the email address. How's that for confusion? So healing the shadow, is that what we've been talking about?
Yes,
the shadow
it
is that
yes.
part of us that I'm not okay, and it casts a pale over me?
Well, that's one aspect of the shadow. Let me define the shadow, Phil, as the place of our power.
Okay.
Now, when the shadow is wounded, or I should say when we feel wounded, then the shadow rises up as a great protector. And it can do harm, it can be nasty, it can do all kinds of protective things to keep this fragile part of ourselves safe.
So when I'm traumatized as a child, and I'm trying to protect myself, I can do it with anger, I can do it with, unfortunately, with violence.
Yes, or you can shut down your feelings.
And withdraw.
You can get up in your head, you can do, okay. So that's the protective aspect of the shadow. Now, when we heal, or begin to heal, and there's no need for that kind of protection, then all of this enormous energy in the shadow becomes a fabulous ally. In fairy tales, you find the wild man as representative of the wounded person who has their shadow just out front and saying, don't get in my face, man, because I'll tear your eyes out. Okay, that's that part of the shadow. You begin to heal that person, and all of that energy transforms into that place of compassion that Christ talked about so much.
2 questions, 3 questions. If I don't ask a question, I'll keep adding to the list. Shamanism believe in duality.
We accept the existence of duality, we work to eliminate it.
Okay. And would shadow be the equivalent of ego, lower self?
In its negative side, yes. So, but understand, shadow in itself is just a force that if we, that we can call up to do whatever we want.
So we have a source of energy.
Yeah.
And then it's up to us
How
to
to use
either use it, or if we don't use it, it'll find its own use.
Well, but that is us using it. It's our negative
default,
side. Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
So if I don't deal with my trauma, by default, it's going to feed into that trauma. It's going to manifest through that.
Well, and to protect you, you can be cruel, you can shut down, you can do all kinds of compensating behaviors whose basic purpose is to create distance between us.
Yes.
Okay?
Because distance equals protection.
Yeah.
Keeps me safe. If
Yeah.
I don't let you close to me, I'm okay.
Whereas if I know that I'm okay and I know that I'm safe, then I can open, and that energy becomes the energy of compassion.
So I get to choose how to use this power.
Ultimately.
So your job is to guide somebody to recognize that they have
The choice.
the choice of how to use this power,
Yes.
how to recognize it, and then how to use it wisely.
Yeah, because most people right now are pretty much out of control. You know, something happens, they react, and so that process just rolls on, and so they don't even often know that they have the opportunity to make a choice that's different.
So you get a client. They're traumatized. They're acting out behind their trauma.
Mm-hmm.
You guide them to a place where they could see that, okay, it's really don't have to be this way. This happened, but I don't have to
React
perpetuate
in this way,
it. And I could do something different. Does the shamanistic practice, is it a practice? Is it something after they come to you, they start doing something on a daily basis, a weekly basis? I mean, how do they sustain it? What do they?
It's 24 hours a day, really. It's what it is, Phil, is there's this part of me in here that before I did the work, I was out of contact with. I didn't even know this part of me existed. It was running my life, but okay. So now what I do is there's this constant dialogue that goes on that says, how you feeling? What's going on? You know, where are you scared? Da da da. I'm here for you. I will be here for you. I will take care of you. And what happens after a short time is then that all gets integrated and it just becomes me. Whereas where you start out, there's this separation that you've got to work to heal.
Once that's healed, I mean, do I need to journey daily just to stay connected? How do I sustain this? Because I imagine it has to be some sustaining mechanism.
Well, I mean, the journey is primarily to go in and work with the misunderstanding. So that's where that primarily comes to play. Once you've corrected the misunderstanding, once you know the truth about yourself, then you just function from that space. You know, you don't have to do anything different because you're no longer living the lie.
So this doesn't require anything of me on a daily basis. That's interesting.
You know, because once you peel away the stuff that's not you, then you just get to be yourself. For many people, for the first time in their lives.
Yeah. And then what? If I find myself falling back into old patterns, old behaviors, I can go...
You go find that kid, find what's going on with him, why he's fallen off the track, and you just work to bring him back.
I mean, for instance, if I had a drumming tape, can I lead myself on my own journey?
Sure, absolutely. What I do with people is I teach them the process. I want them to be empowered to do this work themselves. So that's what I do.
Okay. So then it becomes up to them. Can I use journeying as a preventative as opposed to a corrective? I mean, if I were to journey, I mean, I'm looking at journey like I'm looking at meditation.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And it's, as I say, I think the primary purpose of the journey is to kind of go in and work with what's inside. Once you got that, you got it. Now, it's not you can't have a slip, and so, yeah, you go back and rework it. But once you're in a place that you know that you're lovable, you know that you're special, you know that you're okay, you just work from that place.
Okay. Why would, I guess, scratch that question.
Okay.
So, I mean, the purpose then of the shadow is to guide us to really a place where we meet ourselves in our karma.
Yes.
And then we get to choose what we do with it.
If you were to take in the truth about yourself, let's say right now, you'd probably move into shock. And I don't mean this personally, I mean for most people. Okay. So what the shadow does is it operates as a mitigating influence to kind of hold out the world so we can take in enough that we can handle at any given time. So it is protector in that sense. This separation that we talk about, it is a negative thing. It keeps us apart. But if I'm terrified of people, it also keeps me safe. Yeah. So it's what I need. So what the shadow does is it's this ameliorating influence that allows me to take in as much as I can handle, and then as I heal, it transfers over into my real personal power.
Yeah. So I think we're segueing into book 2.
Okay.
Which is titled Truth, and that was published in 2004. What is the truth?
Well, the truth was written for people who've gone down the spiritual path for a long time and haven't found the answers they wanted. So it's a little deeper approach to all of this.
Why wouldn't they find the answers?
Well, most of them they're reading books and they're doing workshops, but they're afraid to go into their inner pain.
Okay, so you're saying external, not working the shaman.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So
the truth is, you are beautiful, wonderful, special. You're a child of God. None of this stuff that you believe can possibly be true. I throw this one out to audiences and it sticks them a little bit. There's this thing called universal truth, okay? You know, all men are created equal, that kind of stuff, okay? Anything short of that we call a belief isn't true. Blacks are this, women are this, Phil is this, Ross is this. None of that's true.
So is it not false that the truth that I am a child of God, because that's a belief? I mean, are we not then looking for the neutrality that going back to the Vedic roots is teaching?
Yeah, I would say no, in the sense that you're a child of God is not a belief, it is a truth, okay? Now, if, however, you believe that you're specialer than everybody else, then that's taking that and twisting it into some kind of ego-based belief, and that's a lie.
Let me back up just for a second. I totally believe I'm a child of God.
Good.
But it's a belief. It's based on no facts, so it is a belief. I mean, there is nothing to prove that statement or disprove that statement.
That tends to move us in the place that says it's really a truth.
Why?
Because they can't be proved. A belief can be disproved. Truth cannot. That's one of the distinguishing characteristics between the two.
Fascinating. Okay. So I am not striving for detachment like basically Hindu Vedic teachings are, or Buddhist teachings are.
Yeah, it's really more a matter of when you come to know the truth about yourself, you just don't attach to stuff.
So that truth then, because you have that dualistic background, that truth almost starts to become self-realization.
Yes. Yes.
So is there some place in that journey that we go on besides meeting ourselves? You know, like you hear people talking about near-death experiences where they go down a tunnel and they see light and everything.
Yeah.
Does that journey get us to a similar place?
Yes.
Can it get us there?
Yeah, it does. As a part of the process, we structure out building a relationship with the Creator. You come to know God in ways that most of us never do. And it lends a great deal of credibility then to what is the truth, because there's just tremendous support there then, that you are loved, that you are cared about, and you know it. I don't know how else to say that. It's not intellectualized. It's like you've seen God, you've talked to God, and He says, hey, you're okay, I love you.
So if my terminology is accurate, we basically transcend ordinary reality for non-ordinary reality.
Yes.
And in that non-ordinary reality, we find
Truth.
the greatest self, the truth.
You find the truth about who you are, the truth about who we all are. Yeah.
So one of the things your website talks about, it was the book jacket, about the truth, why life is the way it is.
Life's the way it is because we spend most of our time being scared. I believe I'm not okay, and so I respond in that way, and then I create all these disharmonies for myself. You do the same. These people do, and pretty soon we got all this disharmony just rocking the boat all over the place. Okay. As we come to know the truth about ourselves, we don't create those disharmonies, and life changes. I should say it isn't really so much that life changes, it's that how I see life dramatically
Yes.
changes.
So what you used to do that would annoy the heck out of me,
I don't do anymore.
or if you do it, it doesn't annoy me anymore because I understand that that's just
my stuff.
That's just your exactly.
As somebody said, words are only words until I give them meaning. It's like there's this vibration in the air, and what I'm saying right now is just a vibration right here, but you will take those words and you will interpret them in a certain way, and if your belief set is in this direction, that's what you're going to take from what I say.
My perception creates my reality,
Yes.
and then creates my responses to what I perceive as real.
Right, and there is another reality beyond that, which you can find, and that's this place of peacefulness.
And when I find that place, again, this basic core of almost all teachings, that we are one.
Mm-hmm.
And when I find that place and I find that oneness, to quote Jesus, what you do to the least of me, you do to me.
Yeah, and you just be.
Yes.
And there's this beautiful thing about that space. It's like you don't make decisions, you don't even think, you just are. And it's really beautiful, really special.
And then there's an attachment belief, I would say, then it says, when I get out of the way, the universe is going to take care of me. God is going to take care of me. Whatever we wanted to call it is going to take care of me.
He does now, if you think about the fact that this process that's causing you pain is what will bring you home. It's what will teach you the truth.
Yes.
We are so remarkably well taken care of, even though we go, well, yeah, but I don't have on this and this and this. The truth is all of that will bring you to understand the truth about yourself. All of it. It's all purposeful.
Yeah, definitely. And when I find the truth about me, I find the truth about you, and I find the truth about everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then that's how we start to live differently.
Well, what's that phrase? I think it comes from you guys, your 12-step people, is let go and let God.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
That's what it's about. I have a napkin, a bar napkin, I don't know where it came. It hangs on my wall that this woman who sent me to Babaji wrote for me years and years ago, and it says, I really struggle and flow with life.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And it just hangs up on my
Yes.
wall because, yeah.
Wonderful. So that sounds like the third book, Journey to Enlightenment, which was published in 2008.
It's an attempt to help people to prepare for the changes that are coming.
What do you see changes coming?
We've had, up until this point, if there's an issue in your life, you have the freedom to decide when you want to deal with it, how you want to deal with it, and most people choose to postpone that agenda, okay? Most of us do.
Avoidance.
Well, yes. The time is coming when conditions around us are going to force us to deal with what we have chosen not to deal with in the past. And so what's going to happen is we're going to lose a lot of the freedom of choice that we have had.
Can you get deeper into this? Explain it.
Well, if for example, the economic system falls off a cliff, if there are a significant number of natural disruptions so that, economies don't work as they used to and we have to begin to deal with each other differently, I'm skipping a lot of ground here, obviously, but it forces us into a different agenda than we've been able to use in the past. It forces us to be more honest with each other, for one thing. And so that's what's going to happen, is I'm going to have to deal with you from a place of heartfulness, where before I could avoid it, I wouldn't have to.
Does shamanism have shamanism is as different as the different cultures that it grows out of. So there is...
Not really. That's what's interesting. You go to Tibet, you go to Mongolia, you go to South America, you go to, I don't know, wherever else. I can talk to those shaman and we know exactly what each other is doing.
So at the core of the shamanistic beliefs then, or practices, is there an apocalyptic version coming? I mean, what?
I don't know how to separate out, because the Mayans, who, for example, predicted, 2,500 years, 600 years ago that this was going to happen. Those were their shaman who made those predictions. That isn't always the case in all societies. And there are teachers, healers in these various cultures who universally are predicting this apocalyptic scenario. I mean, you go to the Hopi, it's in their teachings, it's in their culture, and that would come out of their medicine men. So it's kind of depends on the culture you're working with.
But what you're talking about seems to be pointing towards it.
I don't understand your question, I'm sorry.
Well, it sounded like you're pointing towards some apocalyptic event.
I'm pointing towards a series of events that will dramatically change the world in which we live, yes. Apocalyptic, that's, I think, a particular view that I don't share.
Okay.
But it's not that it's not going to come without some difficulties.
So what you're saying is, and is this coming from shamanism, or is this coming from Ross, that we see this I mean, that there's an oncoming train?
The Mayan, the people that I studied with, predicted this, almost 3,000 years ago. Actually, they predicted it 25,000 years ago, but that's another story. The Hopi have predicted it for a long time. Those predictions exist in a great many primitive cultures, okay? So I believe it. I was taught it. Is that coming out of my Mayan background? Is that coming out of Ross? I don't know.
Let's bounce here for a second. This coming weekend, down in Bernalillo, there is a place where a Mayan labyrinth was created based upon the teachings of somebody called Acta.
Yeah.
And that are you going to be there?
No, I'm not.
Oh, okay. And that there's going to be a ceremony that is to put out a vibration to help soothe this transition.
Mm-hmm.
You want to talk a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, other than like where I lived, there were probably 30 different tribes. They were all Mayan. And each of them had somewhat different beliefs that shifted from tribe to tribe. So I don't know what this particular person's beliefs are, but I think that's fine. If he or she can create some energies that'll help the process, they got my support.
Yeah, I mean, because there always seems to be both sides, which I mean, to me, it is always going to happen. That's like kind of yin and the yang stuff.
Well, you have to be careful of the wishful thinking, though, too, that says, well, if we just all sit here and sing Kumbaya, everything's going to be fine. Because I don't think that's going to be the case. So I think we have to be a little careful about being naive.
Yeah,
so.
But I mean, I think that there's always the potential for transformation.
Sure, and we will control this process. How I respond to what happens affects everything around me. It affects you and you and you. And so if each of us chooses to be different, to not be afraid, to do this, to do that, the process itself shifts. And that's the magic.
But we always get to choose.
We get to choose.
Exactly, and that's the message.
Yeah.
We've got about 10 minutes left. I want to make a couple of announcements, allow you to tell people where the website is and the books and so forth, and then we'll just come back and chat a little bit more towards, for the last few minutes that we have. So, you hear this every week, you're going to hear it again today. This is public access television. You are the public. You are what drives this process. I'd love to hear from you. Comments, questions, shows you'd like to see me do. Maybe it is a show you'd like to do with me. It's not unheard of. I've done 3 shows over the years that people who've watched the show called in and said, hey, I got the show I'd like to do with you. We made it happen. So get involved. Love to hear from you. Otherwise, you have nobody to blame if you're not speaking up. Also want you to know that I am a spiritual counselor. I'm also a state licensed counselor, but I don't do much with my license because I don't buy into that model much. I find it hard to tell people that they're going to solve their problems with the same instrument that creates their problems. So we work with spirit to help us heal, to guide us, and I am not a congregational minister, so I'm not here to convert you or anything. We take what you have, whatever your practice, whatever your beliefs are, and show you how to use them for your own benefit and how to heal and sustain that healing. Next week, my guest is going to be Rabbi Marvin Schwab, and we're going to talk about lightness in the season, and how it's been a common practice. It's not just about Judaism, it's not just about Christianity. We're going to just talk about bringing light into the season. So, sir, you have some books. You could let people know how to access what your website is.
Website is www.rossbishop.com.
As it sounds,
Yep.
ROSSBISHOP.com. And then there's a link in there that'll show you how to access the books.
You can go to the pages there. It'll tell you about the books, and there are a couple of CDs, and you can order them right there. And you can also find most of that from Amazon if you'd rather go that route.
Okay, so your books are on Amazon.
Yes.
Are they any place local? Can they go into the Ark, for instance, and pick them up?
Used to be at the Ark, but now that ebooks are out, I kind of just gave up on bookstores. It's getting to be such a hassle, so I frankly, I don't even know if they're over there anymore or not, to be honest with you. Okay.
Can people, and we've given out your right email address on the screen. If anybody misses that, by the way, contact me. I'll be happy to give it to you. So people can reach you with either your phone number or your
Yeah, you can write Ross
email.
at rossbishop.com, and I'm happy to have questions or whatever. I'm here in town. I haven't changed my phone from Virginia yet, but it's area 434-238-6779, and you're free to call. It's 434-238-6779.
So if anybody has any questions or anybody wants to set up an appointment with
Call
you.
me.
Excellent. Now let's switch modes.
Okay.
In the shamanistic belief, everything is oneness. So the planet that we are on is a divine entity just like we are.
Yes.
And
it has a consciousness.
Consciousness. So you're talking about this changes that are happening. Are part of these changes being fueled by the energy that the population occupying this planet is putting out? I mean, are we just too toxic for the planet to handle?
Well, let's take a look at our society. If you list out God's teachings, they are this and this and this and this. If you list out the beliefs of Western culture, greed, power and manipulation, colonialism, slavery. I mean, you just go down the list. There are a whole bunch of values that Western society is built upon that are totally contrary to the teachings of the Creator. Now, those teachings of the Creator will be reflected in the natural process of the universe, of the planet, of nature, or whatever. So for many, many years, we've been polluting the lakes and the oceans. We've been destroying the fisheries. We've been wrecking the land. And at some point, the universe is going to say enough. And that's part of what's going on.
So that the planet is basically, the planet Earth is saying, I've had enough poison.
So like the guy who said, you take people away from the planet and nature's going to do just fine. Okay,
Yeah.
so we live in so many ways. I mean, plastic bags in the garbage and don't recycle and gasoline and all this kind of stuff. We live in so many ways that are out of harmony with the natural order. For many years, the native peoples would just kind of stay in their own domains. And it's been the last couple of years, it's been interesting for me to see this. They have begun to come out and say, hey guys, have you thought about what you're doing? And so there's some lesson there someplace.
I want to elaborate on that for a second. Would you see shamanism as the granddaddy of all spiritual practices?
It is the oldest spiritual practice that we know about. But it comes back from a world that has no record, so we don't know for sure, and it really doesn't matter. The thing I think that's important, Phil, is that it is the most universally practiced healing art on the planet, and we know it's been around for at least 25,000 years.
We talked a little bit earlier about that, how there's variety of different practices that you say are all, the same. I mean, so would you consider Taoism another form of shamanism?
I wouldn't call it shamanism, but Lao Tzu's core beliefs are absolutely consonant with everything I do. So yeah, I think when you take any set of beliefs and turn them into a religion, then for me you start to create problems. So so when you say Taoism, I kind of go,
Well, Taoism isn't really a religion.
Well,
it's a name that they put on some stuff, and some people have created.
But in terms of core beliefs, no, they're gorgeous.
Yeah, because that's what I see a lot of is the shamanistic beliefs that I see them infusing every religion on the planet.
Yes.
And we've got this commonality, we've got this common teaching, and we're not paying attention.
No, we're not. And there are those of us who believe that music came out of the shaman song, that writing came out of the shaman story, that jewelry came out of the magical stones that shamans use for healing, so that we see all these aspects of modern culture as being just evolved out of primary shamanism.
Do you use crystals or stones in your healing?
I have some on my altar. I don't use them per se in the healing with clients.
Okay. Because when you talked about that, I mean, there's the use of crystals that goes back.
And there are shamans who do that.
Yeah.
So it's part of, in some parts of the practice.
We got a minute or so and change left.
Okay.
Got a parting thought for everybody?
You are a child of God. You are a beautiful, wonderful, special being. There's a part of you that doesn't know that. And life is constantly pushing on you to look at that part of you that doesn't believe. Start to listen more carefully than you have in the past.
So that which annoys us, upsets us,
will teach us.
Is our greatest teacher.
Yes.
I thank you so much for coming on, spending this time with us.
Thanks, Phil. It's been a pleasure.
Likewise. I want to thank you all for tuning in. I mean, again, this message weekly. I just put it out there. I mean, Ross is a shaman. We'll hear it from different people with different practices, different religions. We are all one. We have the ability to create our own reality. If the reality you are living in does not suit you, you've got the power to change it. That's what we're here to tell you. That's the message. We can guide you into it. Ross can guide you. I can guide you. There's lots of people who will guide you. Ultimately, you got to take the work, the responsibility, and just run with it. And you'd be amazed at the life you have. Every one of us starts off in pain. And then we get the choice. Do we let it turn to suffering, or we let it turn to healing? So with that, I will say farewell for today, for this week. Tune in next week, again with Rabbi Marvin Schwab. It'll be an interesting show. And know that you are one with the divine. Demonstrate it. Make it happen. And you'll be amazed. So until next week, walk in love and light, and blessings to you all. I'm Reverend Phil, and I've been your host for Words of the Prophets. Thank you for tuning in. Please join me again next week, same time, same channel, for more Words of the Prophets.